welcome back to False Dichotomies. I'm Cy Castells,
I'm Daria Quinn.
and it's a bit of a somber episode today because this is a memorial episode for a member of our local poetry community in Northeast Ohio called, well, his mundane name was Christopher, or Chris, and his name as a poet and a publisher was Vertigo. And I knew him as Vertigo. Other people knew him as Chris. But to everyone, he was a constant figure in the poetry community, and even people who didn't know him well knew he existed because he was just that ubiquitous.
Yeah.
He died suddenly and at the age of 40, which is way too young to die. I told Daria I would like to change our schedule up a bit and make this episode about him and about poetry, because that was his favorite thing in the world. And I had already been hoping to do a poetry episode at some point. So we're going to do a miniature poetry reading with our own and others' poetry in Vertigo's name.
So, you knew Vertigo pretty well enough.
I knew him well enough to have ugly cried at his funeral this morning. So, and even people I don't know very well, I am always really hit by death, especially if it's someone I don't know well, because I feel like I could have known them better, and now I can't.
I knew Vertigo mostly through the ripple effects of his life. I got involved in the Canton poetry scene shortly after Vertigo more or less pulled back. He had other engagements and other things that he needed to deal with, and he didn't have the time or the resources to continue doing his shows.
Mm-hmm.
So the mantle was picked up by our friend Azriel Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Azriel considered Vertigo a brother.
Yes.
So that's how I know Vertigo. I know Vertigo through Azriel and through writing Nights, which is coincidentally enough how we know each other.
Well, sort of. It's not how we met, but it's how we continued to know each other.
We met through happenstance.
Yes.
At Cleveland Pride in 2017.
Yeah.
Where we were, we both manned the same drink station.
Well, womaned and personed. And then we found out through talking to each other at that point that we were both poets. And Daria mentioned she's from Canton, and I was like, oh, I have friends in Canton. And it turned out that we had the same friends in Canton. Mm-hmm. And I knew Vertigo. Gosh, I don't even know how I first met him. Chances are, if you've been to a poetry open mic or a poetry event of any kind in Northeast Ohio, you've probably met Vertigo. He was ubiquitous. He's been referred to as the hardest working man in poetry. He was the operator of the website and small press known as The Poet's Haven, which had a cat on its logo, and he did everything he could to support local poets and artists and performers of all kinds. That was the thing that came out most through all the people's testimonies that have come out in the past week, is that he was extremely supportive. He was a poet himself, but more so, he was a lifter up of other people's poetry.
He was someone that provided a platform and a venue for poets who probably wouldn't have otherwise had those platforms.
Yeah. I think that whether you knew him or not, if you are hearing my voice right now, if you have even the slightest spark of creativity in you, use it. I don't care if you can barely string two words together, or if you can barely hold a pen or a pencil. If there's something you want to create, do it, because you don't want to wait until it's too late, and people need to see it.
So, where do you feel we should start?
I would like to begin by reading a poem of my own.
Okay.
That I think I wrote it when I was going through a lot of grief and pain, and that's where I'm feeling right now. For a lot of reasons, because as of this recording, we have just gone through a week of some of the most atrocious gun violence in the U.S. so far, and that's saying something. Most recently, there was, in our own state of Ohio, a mass shooting in Dayton. That's something that we are still reacting to. And it's just been a really hard week for a lot of people in a lot of places. So, This one's called Why Is There Suffering in the World? Why is there suffering in the world? Is God dead or weak or a fool or a jerk? Or are we just alone in the chaos, with pain receptors and responses evolved to persuade against death, keep us limping toward the next generation? Why do we have a sense of justice in a world so unfair and so wrong? Why not just live day to day in the hedonic haze? It would be easier than trying, just to live, not to die, nothing. No reason exists. It's a farce. It's a game with no rules and no winning. So why bother hurting? Why pretend there's a meaning or any such thing as a promise or hope that could break or be broken? My above-average brain is straining its 31 years of hard lessons on overdrive, grasping wisdom from 5,000 years and 4 continents, and still there's no traction. I'm driving in mud, spinning tires till they burn, and the smell is a voice saying, just give up. It's not worth it. But maybe if I could get out, I could walk, I could breathe. I could see what's ahead of this, if only I leave it behind, this old question that's driving me mad.
Sometimes I will write on a theme that isn't necessarily about somebody, but was inspired by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned on here before, I had a friend named Kara who died earlier this year of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And of the unfortunate situations that were her memorial that got hijacked by, at her request, her cult leader.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't about her, but it is about losing someone important. My serenity sleeps in the sky. Every night I will dream of her face. We've escaped from gravity's reach for the cold, empty vastness of space. As we're freezing to death in the infinite void, a lack of oxygen has taken the sound of my voice. When there is nothing left but our vice-gripped hands as we're floating in nothingness free. My serenity sleeps in the sky. God will take her away in the night. As I'm anchored down to earth, I can only see her in the moonlight. Now that every day is exactly the same, I can only hold on to her inside my brain. When there is nothing left but the void beside me as I love you indefinitely. My serenity sleeps in the sky. I can feel her still whisper to me as she's resting her head on my neck in ways that I find comforting. When this loneliness dies and my heart will betray, I am dreading the day when she moves away, when there's nothing left here but embitterment and fear. It is then when your grave becomes real. I don't necessarily consider myself a poet.
Yeah.
I consider myself a writer that occasionally writes poetry.
Yeah, that's how I thought of myself for a long time. Then the volumes of poetry that I was writing, as opposed to everything else, just sort of overtook.
That's kind of how it works for some of us, and I think we each approach our art in a very different way.
Yeah, and I think that being a poet has also made me a better writer of prose, just because there's something about focusing on making a few words really, really good. It just makes it easier to tackle the task of putting together lots of words in effective ways. But I also had a few poems lined up by more famous poets. In particular, I had a poem that I wanted to read today. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's by Dylan Thomas, and it's one of those things that gets quoted a lot but rarely gets read in its entirety. And in particular, this is a villanelle, which is an especially challenging form of poem to write. It's in a very specific rhyme scheme that involves a lot of repetition. Repetition not just of the rhymes, but of entire lines. And it's challenging because it can be so repetitive and because it's so long. It's hard to make it not sound boring. So it's considered an especially good form of poetry for topics that are related to obsession and rumination. And I think this is one of the best examples of that particular form. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last, wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Again, that was by Dylan Thomas.
This is a poem by Kara's daughter, Francesca Faluco. It's called Gilded Age. Let's take it back to the Gilded Age. Objects painted to appear as gold. Chairs, tables, boxes. The rich living atop the world at the expense of the poor man. A worthless piece of shit disguised as gold. Welcome to my Gilded Age. I paint myself with gold. My smile wraps with ribbons. A flower in my hair keeping alarm at bay. Each laugh a cry for help. Each smile an attempt to hide my tears to disguise what's inside. But what the hell? Let's paint it gold anyway. Make it shiny, blinded by its glory. Ignore our problems and pretend everything is okay. Call it our Gilded Age.
Oof.
She is 18 years old.
Oof.
This was written when she was 7. She might have been. This was 2018. Yeah, she would have been 17 when she wrote that.
Wow.
She was really talented. She is really talented.
Oof, and wise beyond her years, too.
Yeah. Her mom really encouraged her poetry.
Mm.
And hopefully she is continuing that.
I hope so, too.
I haven't really seen her since the funeral, so.
Mm.
I just seen her on social media. I think she moved to California. This is a poem by our mutual friend, Azriel Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
210. If you had told me 10 years ago I would be sitting in a McDonald's in the full sunlight talking to people through a phone, I would have said you were crazy. If you had said I would be living in a storage unit, having limited means, I would have said you were just like my stepfather and told you to fuck off. If you had said I'd move back in with my mom, I would have told you there was no way in hell that would happen, but you would have been right.
I could read another of mine. And this one is about another person I lost in the past few years, specifically my grandmother. I hear Grandma in his New England accent. I haven't called her that in so long, not talked to her, not talked about her, except to people who don't know her, saying my grandmother, or saying Grandma Ginny, or saying my mom's mom, not Grandma, like it's her name. I hear her in his New England accent. He's from Boston. It's close enough, as diluted as it is, to Connecticut, to my Ohio ears. He's a rare, gentle man, a grandma in professor's clothes. He's slumped the way she never would, his legs jut out, the way mine do from the couch when I'm spinning a yarn of my own. I close my eyes, and his New England accent smells like the salt of the bay. Not the same one he knew as a child, but close enough to reach across the veil of death and touch her hand. And yes, I wrote that one while not paying attention in a college class.
Some of my best early work was done not paying attention in calculus.
Boredom is the mother of invention.
Oh, well, there's more than...
Another poem by a famous poet. This one's Alfred Lord Tennyson. Although it's not really a poem, it is a part of a poem, which is called In Memoriam AAH, and it is 27, I think, cantos long, and each canto is like 3 to 5 stanzas. So it is a extremely long poem. And I have still not to this day read it all the way through, but one of these days, probably soon, I want to make a recording of myself reading the entire thing through. So this is Canto 5 of In Memoriam. I sometimes hold it half a sin to put in words the grief I feel, for words, like nature, half reveal and half conceal the soul within. But for the unquiet heart and brain, a use in measured language lies, the sad mechanic exercise, like dull narcotics, numbing pain. In words, like weeds I'll wrap me o'er, like coarsest clothes against the cold, but that large grief which these unfold is given in outline, and no more. And I really like that canto because in spite of writing so many hundreds upon hundreds of words in this one poem, he had to include some words about the inadequacy of even those words to express his pain. I just pulled up a poem that I was reminded of when you were reading Gilded Age. In any poetry reading I'm in, I will sometimes pick my poems based on what I've already heard. And just because it's good to have some continuity between readers. So I thought I'd do that right now. This is called The Decadent Halls. I've long walked down the decadent halls and the gilded stairs of don't belong, with damp shoes squelching on the gleaming tile, and my very breath so loud it echoes, and the finished wood smells like ginger and orange trees and other foreign forbidden things. At times there is laughter like jackals, or quiet non-whispers my ears have stolen and now carry like contraband under my coat. I've walked these halls enough that I'm blind to my drabness and deaf to my untrained speech, and the smudges my fingers leave on the rails no longer reach my notice. So shake your head, I will not see, I'm on my way to the garden walls.
So I found a poem I wrote about senior year. The only thing I ever did to bother you was exist. Yet I'd feel your fist through all of my days. The eyes meant to keep watch were always closed to me, until this injustice had its fill. Your gilded path will guide you home across the backs of folks like me. One day soon, I may refuse to be your yellow brick road. Will the wizard still want to fly you home? We're all just mean girls in our dreams, with plastic skin over hollow souls. I'd scalp your hair with the brush packed in, one less Barbie, one less sin. If God were female, we'd be free. Instead, we're left under lock and key. This ecosystem is meant to fail. One less Barbie, one less sin. The only thing I ever did to scare you was exist. Was it boy loves girl or girl loves girl? It never mattered how your friends read me. Your eyes were always closed to dreams. They'll drag me along this road of thorns. I'll leave a trail of blood to mark my past. One day soon I may choose to stab you in the back, but I'd rather stab you in the face. I'm just a mean girl in your dreams, a villain cast to absolve your sins. Your friends chose their victim well. One less Ken doll, one less myth. I once believed that Lilith lived inside me, but Adam saw an end to that. Yet you still can't fully drown out her voice. One less Ken doll, one less myth. The only thing I ever did to bother you was exist. Now we're all just mean girls in our dreams.
Oof, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm not really good at writing about death, but I think I am pretty good about writing about my pain.
Yeah, me too. I also have a poem up here about dreams. This one's called Time for Dreams. Compassion in the soul is instinct. Compassion in the brain is like remembering a dream. It's harder to do if you haven't had enough sleep. And if you can't remember it, it's so much harder to do it. Dreams are the library where the science of love is stored. And in order to read it, you have to close your eyes. But don't you dare look into that darkness behind your lids and assume that's all there is to sleep, or all there is to dreaming. You'll be fooled into thinking that all there is to love is darkness, that all there is to trust is loss, that all there is to mercy is humiliation, or that all there is to life is death. And don't let anyone convince you that your dreams aren't real. There's 1,000 neuroscientists out there looking at dreams through a microscope, and they don't know what it is, but they know one thing for sure, and that's we need it to survive. So wake up when it's time to start your work, but before tomorrow's day begins, make sure there's time for dreams. And that's my fancy way of saying, make sure you get enough sleep.
So I have one here. It's called 7 Deadly Exes. I'm going to break every heart you have until there's nothing left. I'll make you cry every single time until I wished myself to death. I'm going to make it so you never forget. It was you who broke my heart. I'm going to make it so you'll always regret that you made this paramount. I'm crazy, you say. I've lost my ever-loving mind. I'm crazy, you say. Why can't you just let me go? I'm crazy, you say. Well, maybe that's why I've dug my claws in. I'm crazy, you say. Well, no fucking shit I am. You'll never feel anything I feel because you've closed yourself off from it. You'll never understand anything I know because you've chosen to ignore it. You want to go straight for a stupid boy, and you know I'll never let you. But love makes a lousy weapon because you only ever hurt yourself. I'm going to break every heart you have until you run out of extra lives. I'll make that stupid boy of yours die every day inside. I'm going to make it so you'll never believe you'll be safe from me again. I'm going to make it so you'll never forget I'm your psycho ex-girlfriend. She's crazy, you say. Can't understand why she won't move on. She's crazy, you say. She doesn't know how to let me go. She's crazy, you say. Maybe that's why I'll never go away. She's crazy, you say. No fucking shit I am. You'll never see anything I see because you closed your eyes to it. You'll never be anything like me because you've rejected it. You want to go straight for a stupid boy and you know I'll never let you, but love makes a lousy weapon because you'll only ever hurt yourself.
Woo! I'll snap to that.
Yeah, there's Beyonce, there's Taylor Swift, and there's Daria Quinn. You piss me off and you will know it.
That reminded me of another of mine. Actually, it's about who else but my ex-husband. So I'm going to read that one now. Just for thematic consistency. I want to have your abortion. I want to punch you in the face with it. I want to strangle you with the words you said and rip your tongue out, to think it was ever used to please me. To think it ever whispered in my ear that I have nothing to fear from you. I want to cut off your fingers one by one just to see if you will stop me. Just to see if you will say, you know I really have a problem with that. Please try not to mutilate me in the future. I want to phone the emergency room, ask if they're open on Sundays, then cut my name into your chest and leave you within dragging distance, with your shoelaces tied together and a note in your hand saying, thanks for everything. I want to be alive in your brain for as long as you live, knocking around your thoughts, shaming you for every daring hope, piercing your side every time you take a breath. I want to hurt you with your body parts. I want to have your body back, if even just to dig my nails into the flesh of your palm. And that's about as violent as I get.
Well, we've discussed on the show many times that I'm probably a supervillain.
Oh, yeah.
And
And you've proved it in many a video game, apparently. Or at least one.
well, in the wrestling video games, it's supposed to be that way because I'm generally playing a heel.
Oh, yeah, of course you would.
Know, so, of course I would. But, it's just that I'm looking over a lot of this poetry, and it's like a lot of this stuff sounds like, the kind of thing that an evil person would do.
Mm.
And I don't claim to be a good person because I think it's just too... I don't think anyone who claims to be a good person is one.
Mm. There may be exceptions to that, but yeah, that's...
Well, even then, they'll be the first one to tell you that they're not perfect.
Yeah.
A few months ago, I had a bit of a crisis of faith. I opened for a poet who was less than kind to me afterwards.
Mm.
Not to my face, but on social media.
Mm.
And this happened pretty much right when Kara died.
Oh.
And my grandfather's cancer was getting worse. When you're trans, your sense of identity can be easily shaken if any of your pillars are challenged. challenged. Being a writer that writes poetry, that's supposedly good at it.
Not supposedly, really.
But that's what I mean. Is
Yeah.
that, this is one of the pillars that got
Yeah.
challenged. And I'm trans. Not only am I trans, but I'm relatively new to actually living in my proper gender. I've only been in it for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So someone challenged one of my pillars, and I just went to a really dark place.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what I've been reading has been coming out of that really dark place.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to get in if I let myself, which of course probably lends credence to the fact that I'm probably a supervillain. I have to remind myself that the darkness is not inside me. Just because I can go there doesn't mean that I am there. Writing and thinking are not the same as doing.
Yes.
And that's something that I think that a lot of people right now, especially with all the shootings and the talk about mental illness and whatever else, that's something you need to hear is your art exists to be an outlet for emotions that you know that if you actually followed through with for real would end badly.
I have been more violent with my words than I have ever been with my body in any way. And even with the words, I try to be very sparing with it. I think I've read that I want to have your abortion like twice in public places, including this. This isn't even really a public place.
Right.
It will be, though, because I know how powerful words can be. But still, the word is not the same as the action. It only points to the action.
Now, that is not to say that these shooters that write these manifestos should be completely written off. Like, these shouldn't be considered warning signs, but there is talk from our president about involuntary incarceration of people with mental illnesses as a way to prevent shootings. That's not how this works.
It's not. It's also not mental illness. It's white supremacy and fascism and toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And let's be frank, if those things were reasons to involuntarily incarcerate someone, the president himself and probably most of his cabinet would also be in that prison.
Cabinet, political party, supporters of said political party.
Yep.
Pretty much all of Fox News. Maybe even Rupert Murdoch himself, if we could extradite him to the U.S.
And we already have enough people in prisons. We don't.
Well, yeah, but you see, we can get rid of most of the violent the non-violent offenders and the marijuana arrests and that. We
could one in, one out the whole system and
it'd be a lot more than one in, one out. It'd be like 1 in, like 20 out.
Yeah. So poetry.
Yeah. But yeah, it is, I would hope that there are people who are listening to this and are like, I don't know if I want to dive into the worst parts of my psyche. Well, part of it is, one, if you're really concerned about that, go to therapy.
Yeah. It's also like not an either or thing. The darkness is going to end up coming out at some point. But you can make a choice to try to make it come out in productive and safe ways. Yeah. Therapy can help with that. So can indulging your creativity in whatever way that ends up being.
Yeah.
Don't do it in ways that hurt people, including yourself. That's just like general rule of thumb.
I bring this up too because there's a lot of times people will come up to me and, like, don't you ever write about anything that makes you happy? And I'm like, well, if I did, it wouldn't be very good. And the other thing is I don't write about things that make me happy because when I'm happy, I don't feel the need to write. I guess it's probably why I wrote so much in high school, is I was just miserable all the time.
Yeah, I think that I've been the same way for a lot of my life where I kind of wondered, because like also there was this stereotype of the depressed adolescent poet.
Oh yeah, I definitely fell into that one.
And like I had this idea that I didn't really know what true suffering was, so what right did I have to write about it? But unbeknownst to me, I really did know what true suffering was, just because it's like internal suffering doesn't mean it's not real. The thing is, like, whatever I write, I try to make it true. And I've suffered a lot in my life, so I write about the suffering because that's what's true. I also write about happy things because that has also sometimes been true. It's just the volume is very, very different.
So, speaking of dark paths, this is basically the name of this poem. Walk a reckless path as the chaos follows fast. Nothing ever goes right on a burnt bridge. Walking away from no one, never had anyone, keeping to myself because no one ever dies that way. Cruising time and space as if I were 11 with nothing but a box and dead friends in Manhattan. Fought for you through the ends of time. No one else survived. Ruin everything I touch, and all that's left to touch is me. I want to be a rock star. I want to be a god. I want to buy and sell the world. But here is where I'll fall. Lights up, dukes up. I'm fighting till I'm done, but hope is a fool's retreat for those that fight for crumbs. Pet cemetery rules. What's buried will return, but what you put to ground isn't always what comes out. I could walk into the darkness, catch myself a firefly, end up like Bray Wyatt when they burn down the compound. Abigail wants her vengeance, I just want what's mine, but to get the things we want, we must trek into the night. Can't tell if I'm broken or maybe I'm woken. The Undertaker's come for me, but he will never let me rest in peace. I could be a rock star, could have been a god, could have bought and sold the world, but here I had to fall. Lights out, burn out, but every hope I had was wrong. But hope can't be taken from the ones that never had it all.
So you mentioned Manhattan, and I happen to also have a poem here called New York City. New York City thinks it's the whole wide world, so of course I'm here, adding to that delusion with my travel-weary muscles, slack with blood and bruised, like this place is any more significant than home. New York City says it never sleeps and thinks it never needs to. So of course I'm here to sleep. I have work to do in the morning, and a body that hasn't left me alone in 17 years. But I'm thirsty for the words of my peers and the voices of my ancestors, so I'll stay awake just long enough to see you crack your Harlem shoulders. Our bodies are dangerous things in any city, and downright fatal anywhere with a red name. So sprawl upward like skyscrapers, stretch your limbs into the sky. It's quiet where the light is brightest. It's dark out there tonight. This is called Gender Confirmation. And the title comes from the fact that one of the current PC terms for transgender surgeries of various kinds is gender confirmation surgeries. It's no longer polite to call them sex change operations. And when you ask someone, did you have the surgery? That can refer to a lot of different procedures, so it helps to specify and also mind your own goddamn business.
Don't ask.
Yes, it is not. Unless you are that person's doctor or, like...
Doctor or sexual partner.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual partner would need to know.
And only to the extent that, like, it helps to talk about our bodies before, like, using them on one another. Because, and that's true of cis people too. Mm-hmm. Take some time when you're starting a sexual relationship with someone to talk about them and their bodies and how they feel about their bodies and what they like done to and with their bodies. Because you can't just assume that someone's going to like what you want to do to them.
This is not the movies. You don't just tear each other's clothes off and you're magically sexually compatible.
Yeah. So this...
Oh, God knows I'd make it easier, but...
So this is a poem called Gender Confirmation, and it was about my top surgery. This was not a confirmation. This was a justification. Because your brain cannot trust itself. It needs external sensory proof to tell the solid truth from lies. And it tries so hard to find some sign that it is not wrong. So I will reach out my hand and hand it a stick and say, this is my penis. I will tap on its palm and say, this is my heart. And I will guide its finger across my skin saying, and this is my soul. Because it needs to touch something. It cannot believe in a thing that can't be touched. So it needs a name to have a sound, and it needs a man to have a name, and it needs a wound to leave a scar, and it needs a grief to be bound to a grave. I did this to my body now, so that my childhood brain and all its wicked, confounding thoughts can look forward and feel justified in saying, that is me.
So I have one here. It's called Shaving Season. It's shaving season again. Time to dry out the skin on your legs, because heaven forbid a trans woman be feminist enough to find the practice less than worthwhile. I'm gay, for Christ's sake. Kate McKinnon told Jerry Seinfeld that we operate by different rules. But it's shaving season once again. And because one has to be seen as putting in the effort to fit an aesthetic, even a minimalist effort such as shaving your legs in order to have even the most ardent of allies acknowledge your gender is valid. Trans women are the worst at supporting one another. Society pits us against one another, invalidating and validating us based on arbitration. We don't even support each other because we can barely accept ourselves. If you want to say that I'm getting this wrong, chances are you're part of the problem, and I'm not trans enough for you. I don't try hard enough. I don't wear makeup. I don't wear dresses. I don't pluck my eyebrows. I don't wear a bra. Trans women don't get to be butch. It doesn't fit the aesthetic. Meanwhile, I'm scratching trails of cuts along my shins because it's shaving season, and I want to wear shorts. Not because they make me look cute, but because it's fucking hot out and I hate pants. I never feel more dysphoric than when I can't hide my leg hair anymore. When the temperatures rise and the skin on my legs goes dry, when they itch like crazy, when I pay the price for beauty, even when it doesn't fit my aesthetic. Because it's shaving season once again. Maybe this Dollar Shave Club's products will help me stave off the dry leg plague. I'd say this was the price for beauty, but I didn't transition just to be pretty.
Amen to that. At that point, I feel like the need to pull out a poem I haven't really done much with since I transitioned, because I wrote it when I was living as a woman, and it rings more true, I think, coming from someone who is living as a woman. But I'm feeling adventurous, so I'm gonna risk invalidating myself just to bring that one out. First I have to find it. It's called Be Hairy. Ladies, do you have hair growing on your legs, under your arms, or even on your face? I'm not just talking about eyebrows here. Are you tired of shaving cuts or painful treatments like waxing and electrolysis? That shit can hurt. Are you tired of worrying if you missed a spot or if your stubble is showing when you put on that bikini at the beach? Well, I'm here to tell you there's a better way. No, really. Our all-natural, hassle-free system is proven to end your body hair woes once and for all. And best of all, it's absolutely free. That's right, free. To take advantage of our fabulous offer and throw away your razor forever, all you have to do is be hairy. Here's how it works. One day you'll pick up your old razor and say, fuck this shit. My pit hairs aren't hurting anyone, and go out in your favorite tank top with dark curlies sticking out. And you're right, they aren't hurting anyone, and neither are your fuzzy thighs, or your chin tufts, or that one long one that grows inexplicably from your elbow. Take it from me, once you decide to be hairy, you'll wonder what took you so long to try. And if anyone tries to tell you you're ugly, or unfuckable, or guys don't like that, well, maybe there's a use for that razor after all.
Oh. You know, I hear something like that, and I just think back to discussions that I've been privy to about how women that immigrated here from Europe were resistant, even somewhat appalled by the idea that American women shave their legs.
Yeah, it makes you look like a child.
Now, see, nowadays we get that criticism for women who shave elsewhere.
It just moves the goalpost.
And let me put it to you this way. Sharp objects in my genitals are not a good match.
I think most of us can say that.
Let's just say the only time I tried to manicure the area, I did so with Nair. Don't do that, because I got bad chemical burns, like hives. And
yeah.
And that's the last place in the world you want hives.
What I've heard is that if you ever use any chemical product on that part of you, start by testing it on a less sensitive part of your skin. Even that isn't a guarantee because, again, it's less sensitive.
Yeah.
It's often a better idea to just put up with it, although that is often hard.
Well, I've come to the I've just come to the acceptance that, you know what, I like Bush. Fuck it. Speaking of trans people, this one was written because I came across an episode of Law and Order SVU. We're introduced to a character who wakes up in the morning, throws off their blanket, no shirt, shorts, appears to be a teenage boy. Mm-hmm. We learn through her morning routine that she's a trans woman. We just showed a trans woman topless on television. Why? And of course they only did that because they needed to establish that she was trans. Not that she was going to make it through the cold open anyway, because she's assaulted, we get the credits, we go to commercial, we come back from a commercial, and she's dead.
Yep. That's trans women in the media. They're either villains, victims, or jokes. Sometimes all three. Trans men in the media, at least until recently, completely non-existent. So there's that.
Oh, I have heard that there is a movie coming out based on a book. I believe it's called Adam. So there is this guy, cisgender guy apparently, who claims to be a trans guy because he thinks that he can trick lesbians into sleeping with him. And
what is it with everybody thinking that we want lesbians to sleep with us? Like trans women and trans men both. It's like, well, yeah, we might want it, but that doesn't mean that like that's why we are.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, I
So it's a movie about a sexual predator, basically.
Yes, okay. But of course, the transness is what's made, it's one of those really ugly, horrible trans narratives that we can't get rid of. So this poem here is in response to the dead tranny on SVU. Bare chest undermined her gender role, dead before the credits roll. That's what you are. And that's what we are to you, hookers, dead victims, and pitiables. Laverne earned her name in a prison show. Caitlin bought her fame and sided with those that would rather see us dead than human. Where's your rainbow? Got this hair on my chest, sometimes I could care less. Shave or wax for rashes, mascara for eyelashes, an ass that's fit for drilling, but my dresses are ill-fitting. This man is just not my type, but he just sees me as a trap. Radfens scream about privilege. Ever once considered how we hide in closets to avoid the violence you wear baggy clothes to avoid? We all carry keys like claws in hand, mace and a whistle for times of need. Men want what they can't have and claim a need. We're both susceptible. She would love to kill me if she couldn't be me. I would love to make her a better wife and savior. But we just cannot agree on anything that matters. She's a turf who lies with Sappho, and I'm just a fag and drag. Bare chest to show us she is not she. Raped in the first scene. Her dying breath is off screen. Now you check her out on Pornhub, looking for a good tug. Just can't get enough of... Ew. Never mind.
This is a rather old one of mine. I haven't brought out much lately. It's called, so there was I wrote it in the basement of Max Back's books, which is where a lot of poetry readings in the Cleveland area have taken place. I know I've spent many an evening there with and without Vertigo in the audience. It being the basement of a bookstore, it's surrounded by books. And on one shelf, I saw a copy of Stephen Colbert's I Am America, and So Can You.
Yes.
And I had just written this poem that I was going to name Immortal. But then after seeing that title, I decided to name it I Am Immortal, and So Can You. As surely as I'm alive, I'm immortal. Here's how it works. There is no past, but a memory. There is no future, but a wish. And while memory ends at birth, wishes go on and on. As long as there's mind to imagine, the next 1,000 years are as real as the end of my next shift at work or next week. My thoughts in time needn't end with death, as long as death isn't yet. Thoughts can race as fast as a wish or a fantasy, as far into time as time is and does, and witness centuries of history yet unmade. The end of this empire and the rise of the next. The triumphs of heroes turned tyrants and their defeats by new heroes, whom I'll see become tyrants themselves again. The aging of land and of sea, the cleansing of man's brutal mark on this soil, in the eons after his influence has waned, and the flourishing of new evolved forms to fill up the caverns dug by the long extinct. I'll see the water and the very air boiling when the sky is filled up by a sun grown too big not to swallow, like time itself, its children. And I'll see its brightness outburned by the oncoming storm of a colliding foreign galaxy, flinging stars like dust in the eyes of my immortal wishing mind. Then back to now, I'll blink and close my hands around this day, hold tight to my still beating heart, knowing that all moments are now, as surely as I know that one day I will die.
I guess since we're talking about immortality, you know what's coming.
I think I know what's coming.
You know what's coming. I don't have a good title for this. Eternal youth, carnal bliss. You look to us as if we are some romantic gift pining to save you from the clutches of time. Moments before you beg to be embraced, but faced with the truth you run away, because there is no eternity for you. We are not the creatures of myth you romanticize. We are not the cunning Lestat giving you the choice he never had. To be frank, we don't find you all that interesting. You thought that we'd be some eternal moping teenager, pining for one true love to stay by our side forever. Most of us can't even stand one another, let alone the ceaseless whining of the so-called living. Oh, please, take me away from my mundane existence. Trust me, in 100 years, you'll understand. You have yet to experience what true boredom is. Living in a waking dream that humans call decades. Watching all the little living creatures run around you like children. What would a god have to say to an ant? What would the eternal have to discuss with the finite? We have seen empires rise and fall, civilizations thrive and crumble. We have been here throughout the centuries watching as the mortal whispers of the past became the distorted prophecies of the future. Your kind obsesses over eternity, but you can barely handle the moment before you. We were once much like you, begging our betters to save us from mediocrity, throwing ourselves quite literally into the arms of infinite darkness. Believe me when I say that this is not something you truly want. This is not the lifestyle you want to believe it is. We are not the eternally beautiful, young and promiscuous romantics. We are the pantheon of infinite boredom. And you are merely toys in which we play with to pass the time. You may believe that Edward will love you forever, but forever among your kind is but a few years at best. Too many of us have made the mistake of embracing out of love. Virtually all of us have abandoned those mates for younger mortal models, learning the lesson that you have refused to accept. Nothing is forever, even for those frozen in place in time. Enjoy the moments you have, for there are precious few. We will never, ever embrace you. And I have to do it in the voice because
yeah, it does work wonders. I have it occurred to me like art is how we experience immortality in the nearest form that we can as human beings.
Yeah.
Including art about vampires. Supposedly the lowest form of art, and yet it is still our highest pursuit.
Really?
One of the lowest
I would have thought
forms.
pro wrestling was the lowest pursuit.
Are there any pro wrestler vampires?
Yes, there have been.
Ah, yes, I knew there would be.
Yes,
I knew there
have
would be.
been. Nobody currently, but the most famous one was known as Gangrel.
Nice.
That was his name in the WWE. He wrestled elsewhere as the Vampire Warrior. He has legitimate fangs. He actually had his fangs in his teeth, so he's got legitimate fangs. They're not
Brilliant.
So he committed to this character.
I think it was Mikey Newman who said, "Everything dies, but art is almost immortal."
Almost.
So this is one of my very most recent ones. And this is for all the people who've ever told me, usually online, that my political ideals are utopian.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
It's also not true. But anyway, I don't know where you get your ideas about utopian ideals touted by star-eyed youth. From where I stand at the edge of this range, the most I can see is an unequal peace. But even that is unattainably far. The slopes are too steep on this side, and no clear path down from the summit where the vultures circle above, themselves as lean as the meat I've eaten in my last most fragile rest. The tree line so far behind me, my bare feet hardened on unsteady stone, that whoever knows where I am now is surely just as lost. A generation of missing persons climbing a mountain that's growing as fast in the hope that the other side is gentler, or at least less lonely. But resolute in our acceptance of the risk that is rockier and colder, there at least we'll have the knowledge, and therefore more power than we have here. We'll get no trophy even if we win this. That's just fine. We can't eat a trophy. A plastic medal won't pay for gas. I've passed a dozen corpses already, having survived this long is reward enough. And if I die, that too will be a worthy prize. Idealism isn't for sheltered, coddled children. We were raised on dystopias, not utopias. Post-apocalypse is our fantasy. As adults, we're still overturning rocks for hidden pennies, bugs, and roots, setting fire wherever we can find the fuel, burning pieces of this world you've given, for no other reason than the night is cold. For this you call us idealists, as if that were an insult, as if you expect us to care.
You said you had one more from someone else?
Yeah, and it's one that I try to read whenever I can these days, especially since 2016. It's by Langston Hughes. It's called Let America Be America Again. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great strong land of love, where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark, and who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek, and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the farmer bondsman to the soil. I am the worker sold to the machine. I am the Negro servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today despite the dream, beaten yet today. O pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years. Yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned, that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home, for I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lea, and torn from black Africa's strand I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me, the millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay, except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet and yet must be, the land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death and the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.
I will have one here from J.M. Romig. He's a local here. This is response to Orlando. Their bodies had yet to cool into corpses. Their phones were still singing in their pockets, with mothers, brothers, sisters, fathers, sons, and daughters on the other end of those ropes, holding on with holy, hopeless, holy hope. A whole city of hearts were suspended mid-beat, and the news was already blathering about what this might mean for the upcoming election. Is this where we've arrived? Is this what we've become? So comfortably numb? We follow the script, we know it by heart. We point out our fingers, all righteous and smart, and scream about walls and quarantine, about them and us. We sharpen our tongues to duel about guns and their rights, but somehow forget that the first act in this play is supposed to be one of empathy. What happened to us? Once united in the dust of fallen buildings, now in the face of yet another catastrophe, we can barely shed a tear as we're ready for another uncivil war. I watched this all play out again and again and again. This poem is about what happened in Orlando, but it could easily be about any of them. The ones that we've stopped hashtagging about and the ones still beyond the horizon. I can't help but wonder if future students of the 21st century American tragedy will mix up the dates and names like the Revolutionary War battles. Was Sandy Hook the black church or the gay nightclub? Was Trayvon killed by a cop or by a radical extremist? Was that one a lone wolf or a brown domestic terrorist? Who said I can't breathe and what was the context? I forget. Shit, I'm going to fail this test. We are failing this test, America. We are letting the fear into our bones. We are letting it boil into anger. They are cooking us alive. They have told us the recipe time and time again. How and why we still in their cauldron with their broth, acting like we think it's bathwater, like it's going to clean off all the blood on our hands. Haven't we learned this lesson too many times already? Right?
Yeah, that was just very apropos. So, like I said before, if you have any spark of creativity in you, use it. I honestly do believe that art is the greatest thing that humans do. As far as I know, it's the only thing that makes life worth living when things are this hard. So, to Vertigo, thank you for helping us do that. And to all the artists who came before and all the ones who will come after, I salute you.
Thank you. I'm Dari Quinn.
I'm Cy Castells.
And thank you for spending your time with us.